Okay, everybody, this is the moment you've been waiting for. Behind door number 1, I just snuck in here, and I scared him earlier, but I've announced myself now. So everybody, here's Brad.
Well,
hi, Brad.
Hey, Lee. Hey, everyone. You know what? Before we start, I just want to say hello. You have so many beautiful fans and friends and lovers of the music, and I just want to say hello. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for your kind words and just paying attention. It really means
that's a
lot.
good way to put it.
Yeah.
They're real involved in this. I mean, if I go through a day and I haven't found you, is Brad okay? I mean, everybody gets real concerned about it. And I go, sometimes, schedules out here, we can't quite. If I don't hear you in the building, I'm at a loss.
Right.
I'm ready to go back and get on the bus and just lay in my bunk. So let's talk about Brad here. This is really about you, and I'm fascinated too, because I'd really like to know, because I have incredible admiration for you as a musician and as a man, and it'd be nice to know a little more of your history.
Well, I'm not. This is strange for me because I'm not one that really likes to
tout your
talk. I like to listen more so.
Yeah.
But
well, tough shit. Do this.
I started. My dad was a saxophone player. I grew up with music in the house. My dad was always listening to either John Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley, Miles. He was listening to all the cats, and my mom was always listening to gospel music, Nancy Wilson. Nancy Wilson was her favorite, is still her favorite.
Yeah.
And Billie Holiday, and of course James Brown, and that's what we grew up in. And of course, I think I said gospel music because I grew up in the church.
Okay.
My grandfather was a preacher.
Oh, so, wow. Okay.
We would grow up, and I grew up singing in the choir. And if you're in the church, you have to play something. And so that's how I learned. I would always go into the basement of our house, and my dad's saxophone was in the basement, and he had his yearbook as well. And man, I would see my dad, back then when they went to school, they were always clean suits and taking pictures. And I saw my dad in the bands, and they were all clean, and I was like, wow, I want to do that.
Now, where did you grow up?
In Denver, Colorado.
Oh, in Denver. Okay, great.
Yeah. And so I remember I'd go downstairs, man, all the time, looking at that saxophone. And one day...
What did he play? What sax?
He played alto.
Oh, he did? Okay.
I started on his alto.
Okay, cool.
I said, Dad, I want to play saxophone one day. It was, I forget, maybe about 6, 7. And that very day, he took me to the store, got the saxophone fixed, and signed me up for a band.
Oh, great.
Yeah, Denver Junior Police. That's what it was called.
Wow.
They had a band. And I was there with my cousins, my cousin Jeff and Larry. They played trumpet and trombone, and we just grew up together. But it's a funny story because my dad, my grandfather was a preacher. So even though he bought my dad the saxophone and my dad loved jazz, he never wanted my dad to become a jazz musician because my dad wanted to be a jazz musician. Because, back then he didn't want my dad involved in drugs, because...
there's a stigma that goes with that.
Right. And so, my dad never pursued it. He still loved it, but he stopped playing because, my grandfather wanted him to be like a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. Something
legit.
Yes. Yeah. And it was funny when I was growing up, once I got older and I was playing around town, and all the older musicians, I've always liked to hang around older musicians. That's how I always was. And they would always tell me about my dad. They would say, man, your dad could play.
Wow.
He was bad. He was like a natural,
It's a shame that he wasn't able to go with it. Because my dad played alto.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he never played with anybody, but he had an alto sax, and I remember, I would see it, and eventually he fixed it up a bit, and he gave it to my nephew, who took some lessons with it. But I was just number one, I loved the lining of a good case. Just looking at
right.
how beautiful that instrument would fit inside, and just
Right.
there's something really sensual about that whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and there you go. I do remember he had stopped really playing by the time I was born. But every once in a while, he would pull it out. And I remember it like yesterday. He would play Harlem Nocturne.
Mm.
And I'm getting chills right now. His tone was so beautiful.
Mm.
And he would play it only once in a while.
And that's such a good song for saxophone.
Oh, man. Being serious. And that's what I remember. But as I got older, you know, both my parents, they would support me. You know, I grew up, my mom would take me to hear all the cats playing in town. You know, I was young too. And she would take me to the clubs and sit there with me. And we had friends that were musicians. Al Hammond Moore was an organ player. His wife was a good friend of my mom. So I would go over their house and then I'd go to his gigs. And he had a great saxophone player by the name of Billy Tolles. That was a great mentor to me. And I remember the first time I saw them, I was about maybe 8 or 9. And they were playing. I said, "Would you play Sidewinder?"
Yeah, man.
And they played, and I was like, "Oh man!" And so that's how I grew up. My parents were very, very cool.
That's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
I remember that one of the first concerts I ever saw, my parents took me to the Hollywood Palladium to see the George Shearing Quintet with the Hi-Los.
Oh my God!
You know, and you're a kid, at this, but suddenly your ear kind of snaps into position, and you go, "Okay, that's what it can be."
Yeah.
You know, and then we would go to like the Hollywood Bowl for Gershwin night and things like that. So, you know, and then they had a pretty extensive record collection.
Yeah.
You know, so I would just sit there in front of the old Magnavox hi-fi putting records on from Martin Denny's kind of lounge music to E-Power Biggs, you know, pipe organs and all that stuff. But it really gave you a real rounded experience as to what the world of music can offer you. Yeah. Rather than just this one-dimensional little thing in there. So you were in Denver growing up there, and then from there, the journey.
Yeah, you know, like I said, I grew up playing and in the clubs, which was, I'm so thankful for that now. Yeah. It was like an experience that, you know how that is. Yeah. Just growing up in that environment. And so a couple of people, I was real young, and a couple of musicians asked me to go on the road with them. And of course, my mother said no. I was like, "Mom, I'm going on the road." She said, "No, you're not. Yeah. You're going to school." And so I decided to, I didn't decide. I was going to college, and I really didn't know where I wanted to go. I didn't know anything about college. I didn't know anything about music schools or anything, but I had a friend that was going to North Texas. And I saw Charlie Young, a great, phenomenal saxophone player. I saw him on one of the 1 O'Clock albums on the back, and I said, man, I had, he was black, and I wanted to, and he was great. And I was like, I want to be. Yeah,
I want to be that.
That's what I wanted to do. And so, I ended up going to North Texas, and because we had family in Texas too. My mom's from Texas.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but this is the story. This is what made me know I wanted to be a musician. Okay. I was 12. I was in that transition, going to a teenager, right? And I'd always played music. I always played it, but I was thinking about playing football too. But at that age, in my neighborhood, the Crips and the Bloods, the gangs were just moving into our neighborhood. Yeah. And all my friends were, not all of them, but a lot of them wanted to be
going Crips, down that road.
And so, I knew that wasn't the right thing to do because I know my mom, how she raised me, and we were always in the church. But, those were the cool cats. Yeah. They were the ones that were cool. Yeah. And I was saying, I want to be cool. And so I started hanging around them. It was funny. It was a funny transition. But anyway, so my mom said there was a theater that we could not go to, the Crest Theater. Bad place. But one night I decided to go. And I pretended I was sick. And so I told my mom, I'm sick, I'm just gonna go to bed, you know. Of course,
the same old.
So I put some pillows under my bed and snuck out the window and went to the Crest Theater. And I left my window open just enough so I can get back. When I got back, my window was closed.
Oh man, that's when I'm not even going. I'm leaving.
And my sister comes to the window, and she says, "You are in trouble." And my room was right there by the front door. My mother came out. She said, "Come on in." And so I came in. She didn't say anything to me. The next morning, this is when you can, Braniff Airlines, you can get a ticket at the last minute. The next morning, my suitcase was packed. My mother sent me to Dallas to stay with my grandparents. The next morning.
Wow.
And I was devastated. She said, you take a few things. So I took a little portable record player, and I took a Miles Davis album, my sax, Milestones. And I was so mad because, I was just mad. I didn't want to go there. I wanted to stay and hang out with my friends.
Yeah.
So I got to Dallas, and I was with my grandmother, and I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to play basketball. I didn't want to play football. I just stayed in the room, and I listened to Milestones every day.
Wow.
I didn't do anything else, and that changed my life. After that, I finally got to come home after a couple of months, and I never, ever looked back.
Well, you had direction and focus at that point.
It was funny because at that age, I didn't, that teenage is really...
It's real hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And I think to this day, I love my mom so much, I think. Because if she hadn't sent me away...
She sent you away because she loved you and was scared for you to go down that dark path where a lot of cats are either in prison or dead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that is the truth. So that changed my life. And so from then on, I knew it was all I wanted to do was music.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went to North Texas. And I told the story before. I wanted to major in jazz, but my mom said, no, you grew up with that. You're going to get an education degree. So I got an education degree. And man, I feel like, I believe in God, and I believe in spirituality, and things don't happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And all that stuff. And the next step was, I got to school, and I basically was surrounded by musicians that were so much better than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to be in that environment and work and work and work and work and just play, and that's all I wanted to do.
It's great to be in a space where you're not the top guy.
Right.
Just be down a few tiers on that, so you've always got something to aspire to. Because we never are close to what we think we would like to be doing. No matter, people come up to you and they go, you're unbelievable. And you go, thanks. But you're sitting there going, man, I'm like so far removed from what I really wish my brain. I wish I could be playing what my brain's thinking. Mm-hmm. And it's just, and that I don't think that ever ends.
And it teaches you, not only does it teach you humility, but it also teaches you to appreciate people who appreciate what people offer.
Yeah.
And just being able to function in a room or a world where you're surrounded by greatness.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, getting mad and things like that.
Yeah.
That's why I love this band, because...
Yeah, it's deep.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting chills again.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here talking to you. I know. But that's
no, but we're both the same way. I mean, I sit there every night when you take your solo at the end of Pigmeat, and the places you go and the journeys you take all of us on that. And I just sit there and I just go, So good, and then there's little things that you do when you get the honk going in towards the end of it, and you can feel like electricity going through the audience. It gives them, and it's just one of those things where you just go. There's times where I almost forget to play in the show because I'm digging the cat so much. Yeah, and then when Jim goes off and you're going, what planet is this cat from? It's just amazing.
So you can enjoy all that.
Yeah. So what kind of, because Lyle talks to you a little bit, and you guys talk about some of the gigs that you've had up to this point, and also coming up to the point where you went from a student to an educator on that.
Well, I never wanted to teach.
Yeah.
Ever. I just wanted to play. That's all I knew. I couldn't do it. I truly could not. I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't, I just wanted to play. That's all I wanted to do. So it was funny, on about the last month of school, I was a senior, and as I was about to graduate, I was in a band called Fingerprints. It was kind of a funk, kind of like a Sanborn kind of band. And they were on the verge of, signing and doing some things. And I loved it, but I really didn't want to do that. But it was happening. It was a good band. But I remember hearing about Harry Connick Jr. and I went to the record store and I got his album When Harry Met Sally. And I was like, man, this album is swinging. And I would listen to it every day. And a week later, I get a call from Ben Wolf, his bass player. Can you believe this?
Wow.
He said, hey man, I've heard about you from one of Harry's friends, and we're looking for a lead alto player. And we were in Texas having auditions, but we couldn't find anybody. And then someone told us about you. So, and I said, wow, man, I can send you my, demo. And, he said, no, we don't have time for that. I need you to play something over the phone for me.
Oh, okay.
So I played Cherokee for him.
It wasn't the thing you're working on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, we'll call you.
Yeah. Thank you, but no.
Cherokee, cool.
And so after I finished playing, he said, you got the gig.
Wow.
And it was funny. I graduated that Friday. That Saturday, I was in Boston rehearsing with Harry Connick Jr.
Wow.
And that changed my life.
Yeah.
It completely changed my life. Because there's a difference about being in school and being
in the real world.
In the real world.
Well, I was the same way. I spent my first 2 years of college in the music department and hated it.
Yeah.
Because all they were trying to do was make you a teacher. And I said, all I want to do is play. So I finally left and spent 3 years in the science and art departments after that.
Oh, wow.
And when I met James Taylor, I was really considering becoming a medical or a technical illustrator at that point. And music I knew I'd always play music, but I never thought I could make a profession out of it. And all of a sudden I meet this guy, complete happenstance situation. Right. And the next thing you know, he's the guy. He is the face of a new music. Yeah. And we're sitting there with him. And suddenly we went from 0 to 100 in a couple of days. Wow. And so these things, but you keep your eyes open for it, and it's like, if that guy hadn't heard your name, hadn't called you, hadn't played something over the phone that got him going, yeah. I mean, you think of all these little, it's not like a road with a fork. It's like a capillaries going out, and there's so many different directions things can go in, and all of them might have been cool.
Right.
But you found one, and it was the thing that led you to where you wanted. So you did Harry, and then you talked about doing, some of the other big bands.
I did Harry, and during that time, we did an album for Tess Marcellus. Tess was married to Branford Marcellus, and Frank Foster, the great Frank Foster, was doing all the arrangements. And so he was leading the session, and I met him during that time, and he said, hey man, I want you to join the Count Basie Orchestra. And I was like, okay, I would love to, but I'm on this gig now. And he said, okay, well, whenever, if this gig ever ends or something, let me know, because I want you in the band. And so the gig ended years later, and don't you know, a friend of mine, Derek Gardner, called me and he said, Brad, there is an alto spot open in the Basie band.
Wow.
And so from there I went to the Basie band, and now, man, golly, that was a... Can you imagine?
No.
I was hanging out with, Sarah Vaughan, Dizzy, Joe Williams.
No, it's the golden age. That is the golden age of that music.
And again, learning from these older generations, these more experienced generations, So that was an incredible experience. One time we were in Japan, and Joe Williams, I'm going into the hotel, and Joe Williams says, "Hey, young blood, let's go." Joe Williams. Joe, and he took me to all these clubs in Japan. Just Joe Williams and I.
Wow.
Places where he had been, even when he was back in the day. They all had his albums on the wall, and we were just hanging. Joe Williams and I. And it was
That's where you're pinching yourself, going, "What the hell's going on here?"
What? This cat is saying, "Hey, man, let's go."
Yeah.
So I had, and then worked with a lot of people, Clark Terry, a lot of, just a lot of people, man. And was living in New York.
Yeah.
And, the thing about that, though, is when you're freelancing, you have to take everything.
Yep. I mean, I'm the same way. The phone, I am giddy when the phone rings.
Yeah.
I don't sit there, "Oh, no, that's beneath me," or anything, because you never know. The gig might not be great, but there might be somebody at the gig who goes, "Oh, we got to talk." And next thing you know, you've now gone off on another path that you would have never experienced if you would have been sitting there going, "Oh, I'm better than that gig."
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's not good. But so then...
Yeah. So what got you to education then?
A dare.
Perfect.
My friend was like, they were offering a thing called the Ralph Bunche Fellowship at Rutgers University, right? It was, it was a fellowship for, musicians to apply for. And so my friend at the time said, "Man, I dare you to apply for this." And the application was due the next day.
Wow.
And so I said, okay. Filled out the application. Don't you know, I got the fellowship, and
yeah, this is something I don't want to do. Now I'm stuck.
And it was a great experience. Man, it was a great experience. It was hard because I couldn't tour anymore because you had to commit. You had to commit. Yeah. So that was difficult. But, and another thing, it was before that, when I was with the Basie band, we went to Lubbock, Texas, and I met the director of jazz studies because you know me, I like to go out and play and see where the music is. And I met him. He took me to hear some music, and we sat in and played and got to know each other. Anyway, he said, "You know what, Brad, I want you to be an artist in residence in Texas Tech in Lubbock." And I said, okay. But it never happened. Mm-hmm. This is another thing, how things happen. The day I graduated from Rutgers, he called me up just by chance and said, "Hey, we have a director of jazz studies job opening, and I want you to apply for it." And I said, "Man, I just graduated. I'm not moving to Lubbock, Texas. I'm going back on the road."
Yeah.
And don't you know, he said, "Okay, well, just come by. Check it out. Just let me fly you down." And to my wife at the time, we flew down. And again, it changed my life.
Wow.
I didn't know that teaching could be so fulfilling, and so I took the job and loved it. I was in Lubbock, Texas from New York.
Who would have thunk?
Lubbock, Texas.
Yeah.
But the people were beautiful. Anything that I wanted to do, they let me. I could do anything I
kind of
wanted.
just free reign.
It was just, and I loved it, and I still miss all those people today.
Wow.
And while I was there, North Texas called me and said, we have an opening here, and we would like you to come to teach. I said, I don't want to go there. I love where I am.
Yeah.
And again, they said, well, just come down, check it out. And I applied, and I got the job. So
it's quite a journey.
Oh man, I can't, I'm just so thankful. And I was thinking about the people that have come into my life, like you, and just, I'm just so thankful for, Lyle and all, just good people.
Yeah.
I've been very blessed to be around and learn from good people, and it just, and there you go.
Yeah, we all feed off of each other.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it, is, it's just like for me, like when I'm just, sometimes I don't bother you. I just sit out of a room while you're practicing and listening, and it's just great. Because, I spent time, with Sanborn and Brecker and all these guys. I've been around in Jim Horn, all these different guys. And I love that instrument. And, when I get to sit there and just dig cats that really have it, that have the connection, it's like, to me, it's like, it's just fulfilling.
Wow.
when you get to hear it. And every night, with you guys up there, it's just like, man, this is really cool.
Well, thank you.
And it's summer vacation, as Lyle says every night. Brad does this on his summer vacation. That's how he spends his summer vacation. But that's cool, because, especially North Texas, the pedigree of North Texas is unbelievable. The amount of guys I know that have gone through that school that have been successful.
Yeah.
It's pretty deep.
Yeah. Deep.
Because I never graduated from college. I was at the end of my fifth year. I had like 260 units and all this stuff, but I kept changing majors and stuff. And that's when they offered me the gig with James and said, "Oh, we're going to go on the road." And I just kind of looked at finals coming up and looked at going on the road for the first time in my life, because I had gone out and done gigs, but not like a month-long tour. And all of a sudden we were out there, and it's like when Lyle tells the story about the hook and, on fishing, then I was hooked at that point as soon as I walked out on that. And it's different playing those kind of gigs than playing like in a local bar. Yeah. Even though I love playing in a bar. I would never denigrate that, because I still go do it when somebody calls. And I love the immediacy of having somebody sitting as close as we're sitting and just talking to them during the show and messing around and stuff. But when you get out there as these tours start to get bigger and bigger, and it just becomes intoxicating at that point, and the level of players and the quality of the production goes up, and you just kind of sit there and you pinch yourself every day going, there's so many great players. How did I end up here? Kind of mentality. Right. And it's like when I do clinics, which I don't do that many, but when I do them, the first thing I'd say to the cats that are there is I go, most of you would probably scare the shit out of me chops-wise at this point. I said, all I can offer you is experience. And I've had some of my clinics have been over 5 hours of just talking to them and answering questions and stuff. And I'll play a little bit, but for me, it's more just like the backlog of a life of doing this that I want to share with them. And you get to that point where that's really what becomes, one of the things that's great from an educational standpoint is not so much, everybody can sit and practice and get their chops up and all that, but to know, it's like, to me, like a lot of the schools, when I think of, MI and Berkeley and all these, the one thing I don't think they do teach is you graduate on Friday, what's Monday hold? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because you're coming out with skills and chops and excitement. Are there any gigs? Have they prepared you for that reality? And it's a tough one when you start talking to guys when this is their dream. Yeah. And so you try to give them a reality check as to what's waiting out there for them, but you never want to discourage anybody because this is lifeblood, this is DNA and all that. And some cats, you know that they're never going to be anywhere. They're there, but they don't have it. And then other people are sitting there and you're just going, wow, dig this one.
Right.
So it's got to be really wonderful. I mean, when you've talked about some of your students, that what they've gone on to do, you know, and it's got to be really a fulfilling thing to have, you know, and just like for you when you were a young cat and you suddenly find yourself in one of these situations and you're going, I just upped my game, and man, now I'm in a different space now. Let me embrace this and work at it. And then another thing comes along and it just keeps on going. So at this point, so where's your main residence?
You know, I would say Denton, but you know, Carla and I have a spot in San Francisco as well.
Yeah.
But Denton.
Denton's really kind of the primary.
That's kind of the spot.
Yeah.
Right now.
Well, this is great. Thank you for spending a little time with me.
You.
How are we doing time-wise? We had an 8 o'clock show. So
yeah.
I'm just
7:33.
okay. We gotta go. We gotta go get pretty.
Hey, bye.
I love you, Brad. Man, you're one of my favorite things that's come of these Lyle tours is to hang with you.
Man, you.
So
you are.
No, you.
Okay.
You.
You.
Us.
I'm coming upstairs with you. Let's go.
Okay. Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.